Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have William here. William, you're somebody that's been behind a lot of really interesting films, a producer of a bunch of different ones that are notable, like The Baker with Ron Perlman, The Lifeguard, and and others. And you've been somebody that's been a driving force in the film industry, and you've been able to identify certain problems there that you now are solving with your own company, YuVee, that you're working to identify really what people what really people want to watch, and also to incentivize them correctly. So you're gonna, you're evaluating paying people to watch content. So it's definitely an interesting approach, and I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story and what you're building.
Well, thanks for having me, Ben.
Awesome. So where did your passion initially for entrepreneurship, being in the, being in the entertainment space and kind of in the film space, where did this kind of passion just begin initially?
As far as entrepreneurship, I think it's one of those things that's either, it's in your bones, and there's that inciting incident that just draws it out from you, or it isn't, and that's fine, right? Like I think for me, I was in high school, was really the first time of having a spark of entrepreneurship. We had an incident at our school where I went out and created T-shirts around this event, and the shirts within the school were selling like hotcakes, and I had to go and do a second and third run. And it was in that moment where it's like, wait a second, this can be a thing, and what else can I do? I've never really been one that had a 9 to 5 paid job ever since that experience in high school. And so it's always been a master of your own destiny, which I think is something that I like about it. That being said, you need to also be prepared for the down times as well too, because they will come, and have the emotional fortitude to be able to work through those. But I think that's that excitement of not knowing what tomorrow is going to bring is a big part of it, at least for me anyway. As far as my enthusiasm for film, that started at a really young age. I had a grandmother actually who really was the driving force in my engagement with film. Every couple of weeks, she would take me out. We'd go see some new movie that was coming down to the theaters. And, whether it be, an action, a comedy, heck, I remember seeing Gandhi in theaters as a kid. And that was the choice of what I wanted to go and see. I just had this, tremendous love affair with being able to, travel the world and into the minds of, people, whether real or fictional, through this experience of film.
Hmm.
So I'm lucky. I get to, found a place where we've really been able to marry those two things together. So
That's awesome. That's great. So how did you kind of first like enter into the industry and start making your own projects? Like what kind of steps did you take to get to that point?
so my background is actually in the capital markets. Working at a family office. And we I think, like a lot of folks, I had the reluctance when people would proposition us about investing in film. We saw it as ultra speculative, like I think a lot of folks did. And then finally, after a lot of convincing, we just took the time, sat down, and really looked at the different ways in which you can approach it. And I think, like any other asset class or any other sector, there's a lot of different approaches. Just to say real estate as an example, well, there's a lot of ways to approach the real estate sector from an investment perspective. What we learned was the same is also true from the content creation and the film and television enterprise as well, is that there's a lot of different entry points, each with their own idiosyncratic benefits and risks, and you can decide how and where you insert into that whole vertical. So we looked at that for a couple of years, and then really kind of decided on which segment we wanted to play, which initially was on the debt side of the capital stack for a lot of these productions. What a lot of people don't realize is that the creation of, let's just say a film, whether it be, say in New York, or in Louisiana, or up in Canada or in the UK, there's a lot of government incentives that are paid in, to the creation of that content. So for us, we looked at it and just saying, well, heck, I can buy my 2-year gilt from the UK government, or I can come in through the side door and still get that same counterparty risk, but just through a different direction. So we've got the synthetic govy over on the one side, and then on the other side, financing against distribution rights and corporate receivables, on the other side. So it was really interesting for us, and it gave us the opportunity to kind of see the areas of the industry that work well, and then the areas that are where there's a lot of friction, a lot of stress, in the way in which the industry has built itself over the last 100 years. And so, our goal, and especially with YuVee as we move into that piece of it, is something that we've really been looking at. How can we reimagine this in a way that ultimately serves that end audience member? Because without them, the rest of the value chain is entirely worthless. We can invest as much money as we want into content creation, but without that viewer, without that audience member, it doesn't matter.
Right. So how do you determine what types of films you wanted to be involved with? Like, was there a process that you had? Were there certain things that had to stand out? That needed to be consistent there for you to want to be able to be behind that film. Like, how did you determine what to be involved in?
So for us on the debt side, it's fairly simple because it's all about what's the available collateral. But ultimately, at the end of the day, one of the things that we always discuss with the filmmakers that we're working with is who is the audience. And we're looking for them to have a very clearly defined answer to that question, and to say that it's for everybody. There's very, very, very few films that are for everybody. So it's really understanding your audience, how you're going to reach them, because that's ultimately what's going to be of importance to the distributor, who's then going to be the one to really lay down the financial risk of taking that out to market. For us, like I said, because we're a collateralized debt lender, the the ups and downs, if you will, of what's happening in the box office or on streaming, is less of a driver for us. But at the end of the day, we always want to make sure that if we can help support filmmakers and make sure that they're moving in the right direction on their content, then it's better for them, it's better for us, and it's better for the industry as a whole. So really understanding that audience is where you need to start.
Mm-hmm. So what made you decide that you wanted to launch YuVee? Like, what were you seeing in terms of the audience that you were catering towards that made you want to create this type of product?
I think YuVee was interesting because it spawned out of an interesting time for all of us, being COVID. Here we are in a period of all of our lives where we're locked at home. We've got more discretionary time than ever before. So what are we going to do? Well, everybody jumped onto streamers. We needed that suspended disbelief to get us out of the pocket of what we were going through, and consumption of content just skyrocketed. Yet everybody was having the exact same problem. One of the most Google phrases during COVID was where to watch blank. So, everyone was going in saying, where do I watch Tiger King? Where do I watch this? Where do I watch that? And depending on the streamers that you had access to, depending on your geography, whether you were in the US or somewhere internationally, the answers might all be different. The catalog might have rotated. So it might have been on this one streamer yesterday, but now has moved over to another one tomorrow. Great example I like using is Suits. The first 6 seasons of Suits, I believe, are on Netflix. But what people don't realize is that seasons 7 and 8 are actually on Amazon. So depending on what you're looking to watch, there's this issue of discoverability and accessibility. And we were all experiencing that. So that was one of the things, how can we simplify, the journey to getting to watch what we actually want to be watching? And then as we were talking to, our family and our friends and, colleagues and people around us, there became another issue that became very self-evident. And, what I like to say is asking the question to your partner, or to your family members today is the new, where do you want to go for dinner? Where do you want to go for dinner? Oh, I don't care. You pick. You feel like Chinese? No. Indian? No. What do you want? And it's almost like you do care, but you don't want to make the choice. Same thing was happening with our experience with streaming. There's such an immense amount, such a great big treasure trove of content to try to weed through. You'd say to your partner, "Hey, what do you want to watch tonight?" "Oh, I don't care. You pick." "Well, do you want to watch this?" "No." "This?" "No." "This?" Like, you can go on forever. And usually what was happening for most of the people that we were talking to is they were just saying, "Screw it. I'm going to go watch something, on my iPad. You watch something on the TV." And which is so unfortunate because, you know, story, film, television, audio, like, story in its crux is the great connector. It's what community is built around. And, now to even within households, not be able to create the opportunity for community because the issue of discoverability and accessibility is so challenging. It's really a lost opportunity. So we looked at that. We looked at some of the other pieces, and then ultimately it came down to this issue of, okay, we've got SVOD, your premium, like your Netflix. You've got AVOD, which is your ad supported, and then the new fast channels, which started coming in a couple of years ago. I remember when I first heard about fast. The guy that presented it to me, he goes, "Oh, it's totally new. It's a new way of consuming content." I'm like, "Cool. What is it?" He goes, "It's called FAST, free ad supported television." I'm like, "You mean like we had 70 years ago? When TV first came out, it was free, and it was ad supported. How is this different other than maybe how the channels are organized?" But it's the decision dilemma, as I like to call it. There's so much content there. How do you decide? Amongst all of these different modalities on all of these different platforms, across the world, it's remarkable just how much there is there. And so then, looking at it, looking at price sensitivity, and then we had an aha moment, where, again, like I said earlier, if that end audience member, that end viewer, that final person engaging with the piece of content is the ultimate stakeholder, why don't we treat them like that? Right? It used to be, back in the days of linear television, one of the most expensive spots for a brand to insert their product in a TV show was on top of Joey and Chandler's fridge in Friends, right? Because what happened is the network, with that content, had created such a massive audience for it. It created that value for the brand to participate. So what that meant was, it was the audience that drove the ultimate success. Without the audience, everything else is worthless. So again, instead of thinking them like a user, as a number, why not actually think of them as a stakeholder? So anything that we're doing on platform with YuVee, are that's how we see them. We see them as users, as stakeholders, and so they benefit, from their engagement with the platform.
So, William, how does this platform really work? Like, how do you take in all this data and determine the right kind of content to watch? And how is UV built?
So there's a number of different things. What we like to say is, all of the features that we build into the platform are descriptive versus prescriptive. What I mean by that, Ben, is, here are the different tools as far as how you can engage with the platform, but ultimately how you want to engage is up to you, right? We're not going to sit there and say, here's the golden pathway that you must participate with the platform at all times on. So let's take a couple of different scenarios. Maybe you're just wanting to, organize and access content easier. Well, we're aggregating from over 200 different streaming platforms. You can indicate which ones you're signed up for, and when you're searching for stuff, you can actually change the setup, where you just want to search across the platforms that you already have access to. Do you want to search the entire universe? Do you want to search SVOD, AVOD, or transactional? It's really, putting the tool set in your hands to decide how you want to search for that content more easily and efficiently. Our goal is to have you watching what you want to be seeing in no more than 3 actions. That's our goal. So that's the one side, just accessibility and discoverability. Now let's say, let's go back to this, what do you want to eat tonight dilemma? Because what we've done there is really exciting. So we've implemented, a whole AI backend into this, where when we think of other recommendation engines, whether it be Netflix or Disney or Hulu or even YouTube or some of the others, it's all based just on the metadata, right? And from an investment background, everybody will always remember past performance is not an indication of future results. Yet that seems to be how most of these recommendation engines work. Oh, you watched this zombie film, so here's a whole bunch of other zombie films. Whereas I might want to sit down and watch a romantic comedy with my wife tonight, but I'm not getting recommended that. We brought on a behavioral psychologist for a bit, and we asked them a really interesting question, which was, when somebody reaches for a piece of content, whatever that is, what's the process that's happening there in their mind, whether it be conscious, sub, or unconscious? And what we found was really interesting is that it's contextual. The decision matrix changes in the moment based on the rest of the context that is surrounding the person at that moment in time. So who are you with? How do you feel? How much time do you have? All of these things come into deciding, do I go and pick a TV episode? Do I just pick some music and put some music on? Or do I want to sit down and watch a full-length feature film? Who am I with? Okay, well, what I watch and what my wife watches fundamentally different watching styles and behaviors. So that's going to change too. So what we did is we really dove down into that rabbit hole of context and how it relates to content. And what we did is we've ingested a whole bunch of paid and public data sources, where we're looking at over 6 billion different reviews from people. Hey, I liked this, I liked that, I didn't like this, here's what I liked about it and why. And put all of that into the blender, combined it with the metadata, so that way when you log on and you click on UPicks, which is our AI recommended, which is contextually based, 3 simple questions. What do you feel like watching? We don't think of content in genres intuitively. We think of them as feelings. I want to laugh. Let's get spooky. Let's get scary. Let's get whatever. I don't think in genres in a traditional sense. So what are you in the mood for? Who are you with? And how much time do you have? And rather than going down every single individual streamer and trying to find something that fits what you're thinking about within that context, we've done it all for you. So it's all right there. So that's the next piece. The last piece is, how does it work, as far as the get paid to watch? I think of it this way. Let's use a traditional television. You can watch, what's your favorite show, Ben, that you're watching right now?
Well, right now I don't really have one. I'm
Okay.
struggling to find it actually, but I'm watching this roast of Tom Brady is pretty great.
Okay. Well, let's use that as an example. So let's imagine for a second that the Tom Brady roast, the greatest roast of all times, was on a traditional TV, was on channel 3, and then on channel 4 is also the option to watch it. Now on channel 3, and actually we're going to add channel 5 as well too. Same show on 3 separate channels. On channel 3, you can watch it with no commercials. Great, fantastic. On channel 4, you can watch it with commercials. Or channel 5, you can watch it with a couple of commercials at the beginning, but for every commercial that you watch, you get paid. It's the exact same show. It's just your relationship with the content is now different because channel 5 now recognizes you as a stakeholder. Let's go back to that comment about FAST, free ad-supported television. That's been our relationship with TV since it was invented, about 70 years ago. So that engagement with advertising is old news for us. but the companies all through the value chain are benefiting financially from your viewership. You're the stakeholder, so why shouldn't you participate in that? And that's our approach on it. You engage with some ads, as you're leading into your show, and you can decide how much or how little. Again, descriptive, not prescriptive. Let you decide. I don't want to watch ads today. Cool. Turn it down. Turn it off. You want to watch more because you're up by yourself late at night. You want to monetize your time. Turn it up. But you're the stakeholder in it, and you're the one that ultimately gets the benefit from that engagement.
So it's much more focused on catering towards the person watching and kind of determining their preferences.
Yeah, right. It's what, like I said earlier, what I watch, what my wife watches, how we engage with content, even though we live in the same household, is fundamentally different. So why not look at it from that perspective first and work backwards?
Right. So, what are some of your like kind of short-term and long-term goals now with UV? Like, where do you want it? Where do you see it over the next 5 to 10 years? Like, what do you kind of hope to accomplish with the product overall now?
So for us, we're constantly iterating and improving the product. There's a lot of exciting stuff that's coming down the pike that our development team's working on. So it's always imagining what's next on that side, but always looking at it from that final consumer basis, that final audience member basis. How can we give them the best avenue to getting and engaging with the content that they want, that sense of what we call experience ownership, and building features and tool sets around that for our users. On the flip side, obviously, growth. We just launched it back at the end of January on mobile, just to start getting some of that early user feedback. What is it that they like? What don't they like? And so now for us, next little bit, coming out with connected TV and web as sort of the next part of our growth, and then just user growth. Being that single source of where people can go to find the content, engage with the content, but also not feel like, oh, here's another subscription that I've got to pay for at the same time. No. Let us pay you for your patronage.
I like that angle. Yeah, it's definitely, there needs to be something in the space that kind of connects it all. I mean, today I think there's just so many different options, but yet you go on one option, you don't always find something, and then it's not kind of put together. It's
Yeah.
not kind of put together to just understand what's out there and how to be able to find it for the right kind of way you want to consume it. So I really like what you're building, William. I mean,
Okay.
that's all the questions that I had. I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, and I think that people should definitely check out what you're building now. It solves something that's really needed, and I wish you much success with it.
Thanks so much, Ben. Appreciate the time.